There is a specific sound you probably haven't heard in 20 years, but if you grew up in the 1990s, you could still recognize it in under a second. The electric squeal of a modem trying to connect, that rising chain of beeps and static, like a small robotic animal negotiating with itself, before the line finally went quiet and the screen told you that you were online. If you can hear that sound in your head right now, you are a 90s kid. And whether you have ever realized it or not, something about that decade shaped the inside of you in a way no other decade has shaped anyone. The world today tends to lump your generation in with everyone else. You get called a millennial, you get handed the jokes, you get blamed for the things the culture is angry about this week. Younger people assume your childhood was more or less the same as theirs, just with worse haircuts and slower internet. Older people assume you are fluent in every new technology and perfectly at home in the modern world. Both of them are wrong about you, because the 1990s were not just another decade. They were the last full decade of a particular kind of childhood. The last time a kid could grow up with one foot in the analog world and none of the weight of the digital one yet pressing down on them. And then, right as you were hitting your teens or your early 20s, the whole thing flipped. The world you were raised in quietly disappeared. A different one took its place, and you were standing in the doorway when it happened. This is why you feel different as an adult, and by the end of this video, you will have the language for something you have felt for a long time without knowing what to call it. Let's start with the timing. Your brain, as a child, was not just absorbing information, it was forming. Decades of developmental research, including the influential work of neuroscientist Eric Knudsen, have mapped out what scientists now call sensitive periods, specific windows in childhood when the brain is unusually open to being shaped by its environment. Language, emotional regulation, social trust, a sense of what the world is and how it works. All of these get wired in during a narrow stretch of years, and once the window closes, those circuits mostly stay the way they were built. Your window happened to be open in the 1990s. That means the world your brain treated as baseline reality, the world it accepted as simply how things are, was a world with a corded phone on the kitchen wall. A world where you had to memorize phone numbers. A world where a map was a paper object you unfolded in the car. A world where a song you loved had to be waited for, and a photograph you took had to be taken carefully because there were only 24 of them on the roll. That world is gone now, completely gone, and most of the people who live on Earth today never knew it. But your brain, underneath all the adult layers, still treats that world as the real one. The current world, the scrolling, buzzing, always-on one, is the layer that got added later. It works. You function in it. But a quiet part of you never fully moved in. That is why, as an adult, you can feel the strange weight of living in a time that was not the time you were built for. Now let's talk about the way memory feels for you. You have probably noticed this. A certain song, a certain smell, a certain flicker of afternoon light hitting a room in a certain way, and you are suddenly 11 years old again. Not thinking about being 11. Being 11. It lands in your chest with a weight that almost feels unfair because the people around you do not seem to experience memory this intensely. Researchers Konstantin Steadies and Tim Wildschut at the University of Southampton have spent the last 2 decades studying nostalgia as a genuine psychological resource. Their research overturned a century of assumption that nostalgia was a sickness or a weakness. What they found instead was that nostalgia, used well, actually strengthens a person. It stabilizes identity. It buffers against loneliness. It reminds the nervous system that life has contained good, solid, real things. 90s kids carry an unusually rich reservoir of it, because the decade you came up in had a specific texture you can never quite find in the present tense. The boredom had a quality to it. The friendships had a pace. A Saturday afternoon was a long, slow country you lived inside of for 6 or 7 hours, not a small window between notifications. Your nostalgia isn't a weakness. It is the quiet, steady pull of a self that was built somewhere real, reminding you that you are still that person underneath everything that has been added since. And then there's the thing nobody warned you about. The question. Somewhere in your late 30s or early 40s, a lot of you have started asking it, usually late at night, Usually in the quiet after the kids are asleep or the dog has gone to bed or the partner has drifted off beside you. A simple, almost embarrassing question. Is this the life I meant to build? The psychologist Erik Erikson, who mapped the stages of adult development, called this the turning point between what he named generativity and stagnation. His research argued that somewhere in midlife, every adult reaches a quiet reckoning, a moment where they stop asking what they are going to do with their life and start asking whether the life they already have is the one they actually want. Erikson believed that how a person answered that question would define the whole second half of their adulthood. 90s kids are hitting that question now, all at once, and the answer is not simple. Because the life you built was built inside a version of the world that kept changing under your feet. You trained for a career that got rewritten by algorithms. You made plans in a world that was replaced by a different one. The question isn't rhetorical for you. It is the real, central, unavoidable work of the next 10 years of your life. But we have to be careful here, because there is a version of this generation that has turned nostalgia into a cage, a version that replays the 1990s so often in their own mind that they stop living in the actual decade they are in. The same memory that can steady you can also, quietly, become the place you hide from the life you were supposed to keep building. Ask yourself, honestly, do you return to the 90s to rest and then come back? Or have you been standing there for a long time now, staring at a world that no longer exists, while your real life waits behind you with the lights still on? There is a difference. The first one is a resource. The second one is a slow way of opting out. If you've asked the question, then keep what the decade gave you, because it gave you something almost nobody else alive will have. You remember the world before the feed. You remember a self that wasn't being watched. You remember silence that lasted longer than a commercial break. You are carrying inside you a piece of a civilization that has otherwise been almost entirely lost. You are not out of step with the modern world because something is wrong with you. You are out of step because you were built by a world that no longer exists, and most of the good in you is still made of it. Carry it forward. You are one of the last people who can. Tell me down in the comments, what's one sound, smell, or small detail from the 1990s that still, instantly, brings the whole decade back to you? Something tiny. Something nobody else would notice. Let's see how many of us are carrying the same quiet archive. If this one landed, the next video on your screen goes deeper into the inner world of the people who grew up right on the edge of the digital age.